The video you're about to watch is actually part of a bigger course, which is called ClickUp Fundamentals Mastery. And if you want to get access, it's absolutely free. You can find the link in the description below. And by the way, if you need help with your ClickUp setup, you can also find the link to schedule a 30-minute discovery session in the comment section below this video. With that said, let's get to the class. Let me show you the step number 3. It's going to be design ClickUp structure. So what we did so far is we built our process diagram over here as a step number 1, which means we answered the question, how is work happening right now for a specific part of the business, right? Whether it's our service delivery, it can be our accounts payable process, it can be something else in the business, but we selected one process, we visualized it, and we communicated to everyone, this is how the work is happening. The step number 2, we identified deliverables, because we mentioned that we not only want to track the day-to-day things that need to happen, but we also want to have that high-level overview of what's happening as part of their process or in that specific part of the business. This is where we came up with the ideas like tracking job openings and applications, and we also brainstormed ideas about what are the process stages that these different deliverables are going to be traveling through. Now we're moving on to the next third step. Now you can see there are 4 steps total. In the first 2 steps, we haven't even mentioned or thought about ClickUp much, right? So that's the point. This is why I'm saying this is the process first, not product first ClickUp implementation framework. And this is why it prioritizes how you do work and how your business does or your team does work over how ClickUp or what are the ClickUp features and functionalities. I found this brought a lot of success to the teams that I worked with. This is why I'm sharing this framework with you here. Going to the step number 3, design ClickUp structure. What we need to do now is basically take the outcomes of the first 2 steps and try now to transform with our knowledge of ClickUp basic functionalities that we covered during the first part of this course and transform that into different types of ClickUp structures, or I should say brainstorm different ideas for different types of ClickUp structure. As we discussed with you at the beginning and when we were reviewing the fundamentals of ClickUp, you saw that there are many different ways of doing things, right? We can apply statuses on the list level, on the folder level. We can have custom fields on the space level or on the list level. There are different types of views that you can use, right? All of that kind of gives us flexibility and allows us to structure things in different ways. And we're going to take advantage of this right now. We're going to go and again, in my example with the hiring process, which is quite simple, what I did is I brainstormed 2 different ideas for the structures. The first one, I was thinking, all right, so let me just walk you through the thought process. I was thinking, I have 2 deliverables. I have job openings and applications, right? Each one of them represent their own kind of type of deliverable, and they travel through different types of stages. Like job opening is going through draft, awaiting approval, approved. Application is going through absolutely different types of statuses. Now, what we've learned with you is that statuses can be set up on the list level, right? So if I were to keep them together in the same list as tasks in the same list in ClickUp, I would be forced to track the stages or to unify the stages together because I'm not able to track 2 different types of statuses or sets of statuses inside the same list. So what I would do here is I would separate them into different lists. I would say job openings is going to be part of one list, application is going to be part of another list. You remember at the beginning we mentioned apples and oranges put in different baskets. This is basically the idea. We have our job openings as apples, applications as oranges. We want to put them into 2 separate baskets because that makes the most sense. So this is what we're doing here. So I just have a visual idea of the ClickUp structure and I say, well, let me just create the job openings list and the applications list over here. And if we were to go to the structure, you can see I have my applications list and I have my job openings list over here. Now, what I was thinking is we also need to track the admin tasks or the actual to-do items that need to be completed, which are not tracked by these deliverables, right? This way, I have a separate list which can represent our admin tasks where I will just track one of things or things that need to be completed, which are not kind of included into this list or into tracking these deliverables. This is where I have my third list, which is called admin task. Now, when I was thinking further, I decided that I would group the job openings and applications together under the same folder, which I would call hiring and onboarding. And then I would have my admin task list as a separate list outside of this folder. All of that is going to be grouped into the HR space. This is what I did, and this is where this structure is coming from. Essentially, I have my admin tasks over here. This is what we played with you here, right? We basically changed the views here, but this view shows you all the to-do items and action items that I need to complete. Now, if I go to my job openings, you can see that this has its own statuses, and these statuses actually are aligned with the process stages that we listed over here, right? So for our job openings, we listed the stages. Those are applied as statuses for this specific list. The same applies for the applications. The stages from here are going to be converted to the statuses over here. And this way, I basically build the first version of the structure. So this is the first way of me doing things in ClickUp, or structuring this specific process in ClickUp. Now, important thing to mention here, and this is maybe an advanced functionality that I'm going to be describing, but I want to do this very briefly just to give you maybe a little bit more ideas on how you can structure things in ClickUp. In my job openings and applications, obviously those things are related, right? When someone applies, they're applying for a specific job opening, so I want to have that relationship in place. In ClickUp, there are different ways of how we can relate tasks together, but I'm going to show you one specific way that I like the most, which is called the relationship custom field. We didn't cover this during reviewing the custom fields because this is a little bit more additional thing, but I want just to throw it in here because it's going to give you a better understanding of how different structures can be built. So the job openings, imagine that I want to relate tasks from this list, and I want to know which applications relate to HR generalist. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new custom field, and you do this by clicking the three dots, going to custom fields, create new field, and in the types of the field, you're going to type in relationship. The relationship field essentially links two different tasks together. It can be tasks from different lists. So this is what we're going to do. We can name it whatever we want, and we're going to select a specific list from where we want the relationship or the different tasks to be linked from, right? So I'm right now in the job openings list. I want to link tasks from the applications list. And this is why it says tasks from a specific list. I'm going to hit on create because I already have that custom field. I'm going to create it. But if I open one of this tasks here, the relationship are shown on the top right corner. Again, this is why I'm saying it's a little bit more advanced feature because you need to know where to find it. But over here now, what I see is actually very interesting. I can see all the applications that were applied to this specific job. If I were to go to a different application, for example, customer success, click here, you can see I have my applications at the top, and I see that Jonathan applied to this position. What I can do is I can open the Jonathan application, and I can see the stage he is in. I can see all the context information as the custom fields that we added to that task. So this way I can connect to locations in ClickUp and different tasks in ClickUp together, which will again allow you to build better structures and make more sense of the structures in ClickUp. Because now not only I'm storing them separately, but I also can relate them together so it makes more sense. This job opening is not only a separate task, but it also has all the applications that are related to the job openings related to this through the relationship custom field. All right, that's just a more advanced feature. You can try it out, but I just wanted to give you an option because this will give you more kind of different versions of ClickUp structures that you can build. So essentially, if we were to do this here, I would just, again, it can be a different link here, but it's basically a relationship between the job opening and application. This links to this structure and makes more sense for us. All right, so this is the first version of how we would structure things. Now, as we went through the statuses, the custom fields, we set things up, right? We answered those questions. We also related tasks together. Now, this is the first version of how we can structure things in ClickUp. I always encourage people, and whenever I do this, I usually come up with at least two structures. Because when I present it to the teams and I say, hey guys, this is how we can organize work in ClickUp, I want them to have different options. For example, this is the first version, but if I were to think about this a little bit further, I might have an idea that I have two departments, let's say legal and finance departments, and because of some different regulations, let's say it's a weird regulation that legal department does not need to have or cannot have access to the finance HR works that they're doing or hiring that they're doing, and finance department cannot see what legal is hiring for. All right, that's a very weird regulation, let's say from the government or whatever. We need to adhere to that. So in this example, we would need to create, I would scratch my head, think about this, and I would say, all right, the structure that I've built makes sense. I have job openings and applications in different lists. They're going through different stages of the process. I like the way it looks. But if I need to separate this in different departments, what I might do is instead of having them all in single list, right, meaning all my company job openings in the job openings list, I would break them down into 2 folders, and I would have my hiring for legal and my hiring for finance. This way, I can have job openings for legal in one list and job openings for finance in a different list. This way, again, I can adhere to that specific regulation. I don't need to be worried that finance team is going to see what legal does and legal team is going to see what finance does, which again sounds a little bit weird, but let's say that's the use case. And I'm still going to keep my admin tasks as a separate list. So this is just a second version of the structure. And when I'm presenting this to the team, I would say, guys, this is the first version. This is my thought process. And this is the version number 2, because you told me about that specific regulation that you guys cannot see what everyone else is doing or like what the other department is doing. And they would say, Ilya, this actually makes more sense because it gives us more control. And then we would go ahead with this specific ClickUp structure. So whenever you're building this, don't try to make it ideal structure from the very beginning. Try to build something, give ideas to the team, present it to the team, and explain them your thought process of why you're doing it this way. And they can direct you and say, yeah, Ilya, or whatever, they can say, that looks good, we like the structure, or that doesn't make sense, let's change something. So this is the step number 3, and this is where we're actually transforming the way we're doing work, and we're kind of transforming that into the ClickUp structure that will align with how the work is currently done. The main reason we're doing this, just to remind you, is we don't want our team to force them into ClickUp and into the structure that we'll be building, or into the template that we can find on ClickUp, and we want to build ClickUp structure around the way they do work. So this does exactly that, and knowing the ClickUp fundamentals that we've learned earlier in this course, you'll be able to come up with these ideas with different structures and present it to the team so they can tell you what is the final version of the ClickUp structure that we will be using. All right, at this point, we've built different versions of ClickUp structure, presented it to the team, and they told us which version makes more sense. Sometimes, by the way, you can have different combinations between versions, and they can say, we like something from version 1 and something else from version 2. You would combine that together, and that would be a final ClickUp structure for the process. And with that said, we're going to move on to the very last piece, which is extremely important. I haven't done this, and I didn't do this at the time, and kind of it paid its price. And we're going to be following with the step number 4, which is document the new process. So I'm going to complete that and move on with the step number 4. So I'll see you in the next class.